cancer. Outside of the world of astrology, the word alone is enough to cause panic and heartache. However, as with anything else, the more you know about the subject, the better equipped you'll be to deal with it. We're here to deep dive into the subject and examine the facts to help you do just that. What is cancer? Cancer is a group of diseases involving abnormal cell growth with the potential to invade or spread to other parts of the body. The abnormal cells create tumors that may be either malignant or benign. Possible signs and symptoms include a lump, abnormal bleeding, prolonged cough, unexplained weight loss, and a change in bowel movements. While these symptoms may indicate cancer, they can also have other causes. Over 100 types of cancers affect humans. Tobacco use is the cause of about 22% of cancer deaths. Another 10% are due to obesity, poor diet, lack of physical activity, or excessive drinking of alcohol. Other factors include certain infections, exposure to ionizing radiation, and environmental pollutants. In the developing world, 15% of cancers are due to conditions like Helicobacter pylori, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, human papillomavirus infection, Epstein-Barr virus, and human immunodeficiency virus. These factors act, at least partly, by changing a cell's genes. Typically, many genetic changes are required before cancer develops. Approximately 5 to 10% of cancers are due to inherited congenital defects. Cancer can be detected by sure signs and symptoms or screening tests. It is then typically further investigated by medical imaging and confirmed by biopsy. The risk of developing certain cancers can be lessened by not smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, limiting alcohol intake, eating plenty of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, vaccination against certain infectious diseases, limiting consumption of processed meat and red meat, and limiting exposure to direct sunlight. Early detection through screening is useful for cervical and colorectal cancer. The benefits of screening for breast cancer are controversial. Cancer is often treated with radiation therapy, surgery, chemotherapy, and targeted therapy. Pain and symptom management are an essential part of care. Palliative care is critical in people with advanced diseases. The chance of survival depends on the type of cancer and the extent of the disease at the start of treatment. In children under 15 at diagnosis, the 5-year survival rate in the developed world is, on average, 80%. The average 5-year survival rate for cancer in the United States is 66%. In 2015, about 90.5 million people worldwide had cancer. In 2019, annual cancer cases grew to 23.6 million people and 10 million deaths worldwide, representing 26% and 21% over the previous decade, respectively. The most common types of cancer in males are lung cancer, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, and stomach cancer. In females, the most common types are breast cancer, colorectal cancer, lung cancer, and cervical cancer. If skin cancer other than melanoma were included in total new cancer cases each year, it would account for around 40% of cases. In children, acute lymphoblastic leukemia and brain tumors are most common, except in Africa, where non-Hodgkin lymphoma occurs more often. In 2012, about 165,000 children under 15 were diagnosed with cancer. Cancer risk increases significantly with age, and many cancers occur more commonly in developed countries. Rates are rising as more people live to old age and lifestyle changes occur in the developing world. The financial costs of cancer were estimated at $1.16 trillion American dollars per year as of 2010. When cancer begins, it produces no symptoms. Signs and symptoms appear as the mass grows or ulcerates. The findings that result depend on the cancer's classification and area. Few symptoms are specific. Many frequently occur in individuals who have other conditions. Cancer can be challenging to diagnose and is considered a great imitator. People may become anxious or depressed post-diagnosis. The risk of suicide in people with cancer is approximately double. Metastases is the spread of cancer to other locations in the body. The dispersed tumors are metastatic, while the original is the primary tumor. Almost all cancers can metastasize. Most cancer deaths are due to cancer that has metastasized. Metastases is expected in the late stages of cancer, and it can occur via the blood or the lymphatic system, or both. The typical steps in metastases are local invasion, intravasation into the blood or lymph, circulation through the body, extravasation into the new tissue, proliferation, and angiogenesis. Different types of cancers tend to metastasize to particular organs, but the most common places for metastasis are the lungs, liver, brain, and bones. Some 90 to 95% of cancer cases are genetic mutations from environmental and lifestyle factors. The remaining 5 to 10% are due to inherited genetics. Environmental refers to any not inherited cause, such as lifestyle, economic, and behavioral factors, and not merely pollution. Psychological stress does not appear to be a risk factor for the onset of cancer, though it may worsen outcomes in those who already have cancer. It is nearly impossible to prove what caused particular cancer because the various causes do not have specific fingerprints. For example, suppose a person who uses tobacco heavily develops lung cancer. In that case, it is probably caused by tobacco use. Still, since everyone has a slight chance of developing lung cancer due to air pollution or radiation, cancer may have developed for one of those reasons. Accepting the rare transmissions that occur with pregnancies and occasional organ donors, cancer is generally not a transmissible disease. Cancer is fundamentally a disease of tissue growth regulation. The genes that regulate cell growth and differentiation must be altered for a normal cell to transform into a cancer cell. The affected genes are divided into two broad categories. Oncogenes are genes that promote cell growth and reproduction. Tumor suppressor genes are genes that inhibit cell division and survival. Malignant transformation can occur by forming novel oncogenes, the inappropriate overexpression of normal oncogenes, or the underexpression or disabling of tumor suppressor genes. Typically, changes in multiple genes are required to transform a normal cell into a cancer cell. Genetic changes can occur at different levels and by other mechanisms. The gain or loss of an entire chromosome can occur through errors in mitosis. More common are mutations, which are changes in the nucleotide sequence of genomic DNA. Large-scale mutations involve the deletion or gain of a portion of a chromosome. Genomic amplification occurs when a cell gains copies of a small chromosomal locus, often 20 or more, usually containing one or more oncogenes and adjacent genetic material. Translocation occurs when two separate chromosomal regions become abnormally fused, often at a characteristic location. A well-known example of this is the Philadelphia chromosome, or translocation of chromosomes 9 and 22, which happens in chronic myelogenous leukemia and produces the BCR-ABL fusion protein, an oncogenic tyrosine kinase. Small-scale mutations include point mutations, deletions, and insertions, which may occur in the promoter region of a gene and affect its expression, or may happen in the gene's coding sequence and alter the function or stability of its protein product. Disruption of a single gene may also result from the integration of genomic material from a DNA virus or retrovirus, leads to viral oncogenes expression in the affected cell and its descendants. Replicating the data contained within the DNA of living cells will probabilistically result in some mutations. Complex error correction and prevention are built into the process and safeguard the cell against cancer. If a significant error occurs, the damaged cell can self-destruct through programmed cell death and apoptosis. If the error control processes fail, the mutations will survive and be passed along to daughter cells. Some environments make errors more likely to arise and propagate. Such settings can include disruptive substances called carcinogens, repeated physical injury, heat, ionizing radiation, or hypoxia. The errors that cause cancer are self-amplifying and compounding. For example, a mutation in the error-correcting machinery of a cell might cause that cell and its children to accumulate errors more rapidly. A further mutation in an oncogene might cause the cell to reproduce more rapidly and more frequently than its normal counterparts. A further mutation may cause the loss of a tumor suppressor gene, disrupting the apoptosis signaling pathway and immortalizing the cell. A further mutation in the signaling machinery of the cell might send error-causing signals to nearby cells. The transformation of a normal cell into cancer is akin to a chain reaction caused by initial errors, compounding into more severe errors, progressively allowing the cell to escape more controls that limit average tissue growth. This rebellion-like scenario is an undesirable survival of the fittest, where the driving forces of evolution work against the body's design and enforcement of the order. Once cancer has begun to develop, this ongoing process, called clonal evolution, drives progression to more invasive stages. Clonal evolution leads to intratumor heterogeneity, cancer cells with heterogeneous mutations that complicate designing effective treatment strategies and require an evolutionary approach. Characteristic abilities developed by cancers are divided into categories. Specifically, evasion of apoptosis, self-sufficiency in growth signals, insensitivity to anti-growth signals, sustained angiogenesis, limitless replicative potential, metastases, reprogramming of energy metabolism, and evasion of immune destruction. The classical view of cancer is a set of diseases driven by progressive genetic abnormalities that include mutations in tumor suppressor genes and oncogenes and chromosomal abnormalities. Epigenetic alterations are functionally relevant modifications to the genome that do not change the nucleotide sequence. Examples of such modifications are changes in DNA methylation, hypermethylation, and hypomethylation. Histone modification and changes in chromosomal architecture are caused by inappropriate expression of proteins, such as HMGA2 or HMGA1. Each of these alterations regulates gene expression without altering the underlying DNA sequence. These changes may remain through cell divisions, last for multiple generations, and can be considered to be epimutations equivalent to mutations. Epigenetic alterations frequently occur in cancers. For example, one study listed protein-coding genes commonly altered in their methylation associated with colon cancer. These included 147 hypermethylated and 27 hypomethylated genes. Of the hypermethylated genes, 10 were hypermethylated in 100% of colon cancers, and many others were hypermethylated in more than 50% of colon cancers. Most cancers are initially recognized either because of the appearance of signs or symptoms or through screening. Neither of these leads to a definitive diagnosis, which requires the examination of a tissue sample by a pathologist. People with suspected cancer are investigated with medical tests. These commonly include blood tests, X-rays, CT scans, and endoscopy. The tissue diagnosis from the biopsy indicates the increasing type of cell, its histological grade, genetic abnormalities, and other features. Together, this information helps evaluate the prognosis and choose the best treatment. Cytogenetics and immunohistochemistry are other types of tissue tests. These tests provide information about molecular changes, such as mutations, fusion genes, and numerical chromosome changes, and may thus also indicate the prognosis and best treatment. Cancers are classified by the type of cell that the tumor cells resemble and are presumed to be the origin of the tumor. These types include carcinoma, cancers derived from epithelial cells. This group includes many of the most common cancers and includes nearly all those in the breast, prostate, lung, pancreas, and colon. Sarcoma, cancers arising from connective tissue like bone, cartilage, fat, and nerve. Each develops from cells originating in mesenchymal cells outside the bone marrow. Lymphoma and leukemia. These two classes arise from hematopoietic, blood-forming cells that leave the marrow and mature in the lymph nodes and blood, respectively. Germ cell tumor. Cancers derived from pluripotent cells, most often presenting in the testicle or the ovary, seminoma, and dysgerminoma, respectively. Blastoma. Cancers derived from immature, precursor cells or embryonic tissue. Cancers are usually named using carcinoma, sarcoma, or blastoma as a suffix, with the Latin or Greek word for the organ or tissue of origin as the root. For example, cancers of the liver parenchyma arising from malignant epithelial cells are called hepatocarcinoma, while a malignancy arising from primitive liver precursor cells is called a hepatoblastoma, and cancer arising from fat cells is called a liposarcoma. For some common cancers, the English organ name is used. For example, the most common type of breast cancer is called ductal carcinoma of the breast. Here, the adjective ductal refers to the appearance of cancer under the microscope, which suggests that it has originated in the milk ducts. Benign tumors which are not cancers are named using oma as a suffix with the organ name as the root. For example, a benign tumor of smooth muscle cells is called a leiomyoma. The common name of this frequently occurring benign tumor in the uterus is fibroid. Confusingly, some types of cancer use the noma suffix, including melanoma and seminoma. Some types of cancer are named for the size and shape of the cells under a microscope, such as giant cell carcinoma, spindle cell carcinoma, and small cell carcinoma. Cancer prevention. Cancer prevention is defined as active measures to decrease cancer risk. The vast majority of cancer cases are due to environmental risk factors. Many of these environmental factors are controllable lifestyle choices. Thus, cancer is generally preventable. Between 70 and 90% of common cancers are due to environmental factors and therefore potentially avoidable. More significant than 30% of cancer deaths could be prevented by avoiding risk factors including tobacco, excess weight or obesity, poor diet, physical inactivity, alcohol, sexually transmitted infections, and air pollution. Further, poverty could be considered an indirect risk factor in human cancers. Not all environmental causes are controllable, such as naturally occurring background radiation and cancers, caused through hereditary genetic disorders, and thus are not preventable via personal behavior. While many dietary recommendations have been proposed to reduce cancer risks, the evidence to support them is not definitive. The primary dietary factors that increase risk are obesity and alcohol consumption. Diets low in fruits and vegetables and high in red meat have been implicated, but reviews and meta-analyses do not come to a consistent conclusion. Vaccines have been developed that prevent infection by some carcinogenic viruses. The human papillomavirus vaccine Gardasil and Cervarix decreases cervical cancer risk. The hepatitis B vaccine prevents disease with hepatitis B virus and thus reduces the risk of liver cancer. The administration of human papillomavirus and hepatitis B vaccinations is recommended where resources allow. Unlike diagnostic efforts prompted by symptoms and medical signs, cancer screening involves efforts to detect cancer after it has formed, but before any noticeable symptoms appear. This may involve physical examination, blood or urine tests, or medical imaging. Cancer screening is not available for many types of cancers. Even when tests are available, they may not be recommended for everyone. Universal screening or mass screening involves screening everyone. Selective screening identifies people at higher risk, such as people with a family history. Several factors are considered to determine whether the benefits of screening outweigh the risks and the costs of screening. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force issues recommendations for various cancers. strongly recommends cervical cancer screening in women who are sexually active and have a cervix at least until the age of 65. Recommend that Americans be screened for colorectal cancer via fecal occult blood testing, sigmoidoscopy, or colonoscopy starting at age 50 until age 75. Evidence is insufficient to recommend for or against screening for skin cancer, oral cancer, lung cancer, or prostate cancer in men under 75. Routine screening is not recommended for bladder cancer, testicular cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, or prostate cancer. Recommends mammography for breast cancer screening every 2 years from ages 50 to 74, but does not recommend breast self-examination or clinical breast examination. In Japan, screens for gastric cancer use photofluorography due to the high incidence there. Unofficial groups recommend genetic testing for individuals at increased risk of certain cancers. Carriers of these mutations may then undergo enhanced surveillance, chemoprevention, or preventative surgery to reduce their subsequent risk. Many treatment options for cancer exist. The primary ones include surgery, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, hormonal therapy, targeted therapy, and palliative care. Which treatments are used depends on the type, location, and grade of cancer, and the patient's health and preferences. The treatment intent may or may not be curative. Chemotherapy is cancer treatment with one or more cytotoxic antineoplastic drugs and chemotherapeutic agents as part of a standardized regimen. The term encompasses a variety of drugs, which are divided into broad categories such as alkylating agents and antimetabolites. Traditional chemotherapeutic agents act by killing cells that divide rapidly, a critical property of most cancer cells. Researchers found that providing combined cytotoxic drugs is better than a single drug, a process called the combination therapy, which has an advantage in the statistics of survival and response to the tumor and the progress of the disease. A Cochrane review concluded that combined therapy was more effective in treating metastasized breast cancer. However, generally, it is not sure whether combination chemotherapy leads to better health outcomes when both survival and toxicity are considered. Targeted therapy is a form of chemotherapy that targets specific molecular differences between cancer and normal cells. The first targeted therapies blocked the estrogen receptor molecule, inhibiting the growth of breast cancer. Another typical example is the class of BCR-ABL inhibitors used to treat chronic myelogenous leukemia. Currently, targeted therapies exist for many of the most common cancer types, including bladder cancer, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, kidney cancer, leukemia, liver cancer, lung cancer, lymphoma, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, skin cancer, and thyroid cancer, as well as other cancer types. The efficacy of chemotherapy depends on the type of cancer and the stage. In combination with surgery, chemotherapy has proven helpful in breast cancer, colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, osteogenic sarcoma, testicular cancer, ovarian cancer, and certain lung cancers. Chemotherapy is curative for some cancers, such as leukemias, ineffective in some brain tumors, and needless in others, like most non-melanoma skin cancers. The effectiveness of chemotherapy is often limited by its toxicity to other tissues in the body. Even when chemotherapy does not provide a permanent cure, it may be helpful to reduce symptoms, such as pain, or to reduce the size of an inoperable tumor in the hope that surgery will become possible in the future. Radiation therapy involves ionizing radiation to either cure or improve symptoms. It works by damaging the DNA of cancerous tissue, killing it. To spare normal tissues, such as skin or organs, which radiation must pass through to treat the tumor, shaped radiation beams aim from multiple exposure angles to intersect at the tumor, providing a much larger dose than in the surrounding, healthy tissue. As with chemotherapy, cancers vary in their response to radiation therapy. Radiation therapy is used in about half of the cases. The radiation can be either internal sources, brachytherapy, or external sources. The radiation is most commonly low-energy X-rays for treating skin cancers, while higher-energy X-rays are used for cancers within the body. Radiation is typically used in addition to surgery and/or chemotherapy. It may be used alone for certain types of cancer, such as early head and neck cancer. It is effective in about 70% of patients with painful bone metastases. Surgery is the primary treatment method for most isolated, solid cancers and may play a role in palliation and prolonged survival. It is typically an essential part of definitive diagnosis and staging of tumors, as biopsies are usually required. In localized cancer, surgery typically attempts to remove the entire mass, and in some instances, the lymph nodes in the area. For some types of cancer, this is sufficient to eliminate cancer. Palliative care is a treatment that attempts to help the patient feel better and may be combined with an attempt to treat cancer. Palliative care includes action to reduce physical, emotional, spiritual, and psychosocial distress. Unlike treatment aimed at directly killing cancer cells, the primary goal of palliative care is to improve the quality of life. People at all stages of cancer treatment typically receive palliative care. In some cases, medical specialty professional organizations recommend that patients and physicians respond to cancer only with palliative care. This applies to patients who display low performance status, implying limited ability to care for themselves, received no benefit from prior evidence-based treatments, are not eligible to participate in any appropriate clinical trial. No substantial evidence implies that treatment would be effective. Palliative care may be confused with hospice, and therefore only indicated when people approach the end of life. Like hospice care, palliative care attempts to help patients cope with their immediate needs and increase comfort. Unlike hospice care, palliative care does not require people to stop treatment aimed at cancer. Multiple national medical guidelines recommend early palliative care for patients with cancer that have distressing symptoms or need help coping with their illness. In patients first diagnosed with metastatic disease, palliative care may be immediately indicated. Palliative care is indicated for patients with a prognosis of fewer than 12 months of life, even given aggressive treatment. A variety of therapies using immunotherapy, stimulating or helping the immune system fight cancer, have come into use since 1997. Approaches include antibodies, checkpoint therapy, and adoptive cell transfer. Laser therapy uses high-intensity light to treat cancer by shrinking or destroying tumors or precancerous growths. Lasers are most commonly used to treat superficial cancers on the surface of the body or the lining of internal organs. It is used to treat basal cell skin cancer and the very early stages of others like cervical, penile, vaginal, vulvar, and non-small cell lung cancer. It is often combined with other treatments, such as surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation therapy. Laser-induced interstitial thermotherapy, or interstitial laser photocoagulation, uses lasers to treat some cancers using hyperthermia, which uses heat to shrink tumors by damaging or killing cancer cells. Lasers are more precise than surgery and cause minor damage, pain, bleeding, swelling, and scarring. A disadvantage is surgeons must have specialized training. It may be more expensive than other treatments. Complementary and alternative cancer treatments are various therapies, practices, and products not part of conventional medicine. Complementary medicine refers to methods and substances used along with traditional medicine, while alternative medicine refers to compounds used instead of conventional medicine. Most complementary and alternative therapies for cancer have not been studied or tested using traditional techniques, such as clinical trials. Some alternative treatments have been investigated and proven ineffective, but still continue to be marketed and promoted. Cancer researcher Andrew J. Vickers stated, "The label unproven is inappropriate for such therapies. It is time to assert that many alternative cancer therapies have been disproven. Survival rates vary by cancer type and by the stage at which it is diagnosed, ranging from majority survival to complete mortality 5 years after diagnosis. Once cancer has metastasized, the prognosis typically becomes much worse. About half of patients receiving treatment for invasive cancer, excluding carcinoma in situ and non-melanoma skin cancers, die from that cancer or its treatment. A majority of cancer deaths are due to metastasis of the primary tumor. Survival is worse in the developing world, partly because the most common cancer types are more challenging to treat than those associated with developed countries. Those who survive cancer develop a second primary cancer at about twice the rate of those never diagnosed. The increased risk is due to the random chance of developing any cancer, the likelihood of surviving first cancer, the same risk factors that produced first cancer, unwanted side effects of treating first cancer, particularly radiation therapy and better compliance with screening. Predicting short or long-term survival depends on many factors. The most important are the cancer type and the patient's age and overall health. Those frail with other health problems have lower survival rates than otherwise healthy people. Centenarians are unlikely to survive for 5 years even if treatment is successful. People who report a higher quality of life tend to live longer. People with lower quality of life may be affected by depression and other complications or disease progression that impair quality and quantity of life. Additionally, patients with a worse prognosis may be depressed or report poorer quality of life because they perceive that their condition is likely fatal. People with cancer have an increased risk of blood clots in their veins, which can be life-threatening. The use of blood thinners such as heparin decreases the risk of blood clots, but has not been shown to increase survival in people with cancer. People who take blood thinners also have an increased risk of bleeding. Although extremely rare, some forms of cancer can heal spontaneously, even from an advanced stage. This phenomenon is known as spontaneous remission. Estimates are that in 2018, 18.1 million new cases of cancer and 9.6 million deaths occurred globally. About 20% of males and 17% of females will get cancer, while 13% of males and 9% of females will die from it. In 2008, approximately 12.7 million cancers were diagnosed, excluding non-melanoma skin cancers and other non-invasive cancers, and in 2010 nearly 7.98 million people died. Cancers account for about 16% of deaths. The most common as of 2018 are lung cancer, 1.76 million deaths, colorectal cancer, 860,000, stomach cancer, 780,000, liver cancer, 780,000, and breast cancer, 620,000. This makes invasive cancer the leading cause of death in the developed world and the second leading in developing countries. Over half of the cases occur in the developing world. Deaths from cancer were 5.8 million in 1990. Deaths have been increasing primarily due to longer lifespans and lifestyle changes in the developing world. The most significant risk factor for developing cancer is age. Although cancer can strike at any age, most patients with invasive cancer are over 65. According to cancer researcher Robert A. Weinberg, if we lived long enough, sooner or later we all would get cancer. Some association between aging and cancer is attributed to immunosenescence, errors accumulated in DNA over a lifetime, and age-related changes in the endocrine system. Aging's effect on cancer is complicated by factors such as DNA damage and inflammation promoting it, and factors such as vascular aging and endocrine changes inhibiting it. Some slow-growing cancers are widespread but often are not fatal. Autopsy studies in Europe and Asia showed that up to 36% of people have undiagnosed and harmless thyroid cancer at their deaths, and that 80% of men develop prostate cancer by age 80. As these cancers do not cause the patient's death, Identifying them would have represented overdiagnosis rather than proper medical care. The three most common childhood cancers are leukemia, 34%, brain tumors, 23%, and lymphomas, 12%. In the United States, cancer affects about 1 in 285 children. Childhood cancer rates increased by 0.6% per year between 1975 and 2002 in the United States and 1.1% per year between 1978 and 1997 in Europe. Death from childhood cancer decreased by half between 1975 and 2010 in the United States. Although many diseases, such as heart failure, may have a worse prognosis than most cancer cases, cancer is the subject of widespread fear and taboos. The euphemism of a long illness to describe cancers leading to death is still commonly used in obituaries, rather than naming the disease explicitly, reflecting an apparent stigma. Cancer is also emphasized as the C word. Macmillan Cancer Support uses the term to lessen the fear of the disease. In Nigeria, one local name for cancer translates into English as the disease that cannot be cured. This deep belief that cancer is necessarily a complex and usually deadly disease is reflected in the systems chosen by society to compile cancer statistics. The most common form of cancer, non-melanoma skin cancers, accounting for about 1/3 of cancer cases worldwide, but very few deaths, are excluded from cancer statistics, specifically because they are easily treated and almost always cured, often in a single, short, outpatient procedure. Western conceptions of patients' rights for people with cancer include a duty to disclose the medical situation to the person fully, and the right to engage in shared decision-making in a way that respects the person's values. In other cultures, other rights and values are preferred. For example, most African cultures value whole families rather than individualism. In parts of Africa, a diagnosis is commonly made so late that a cure is not possible, and treatment, if available at all, would quickly bankrupt the family. As a result of these factors, African healthcare providers tend to let family members decide whether, when, and how to disclose the diagnosis. They tend to do so slowly and circuitously, as the person shows interest and an ability to cope with the grim news. People from Asian and South American countries also tend to prefer a slower, less candid approach to disclosure than is idealized in the United States and Western Europe. They believe that sometimes it would be preferable not to be told about a cancer diagnosis. In general, disclosure of the diagnosis is more common than it was in the 20th century, but full disclosure of the prognosis is not offered to many patients worldwide. In the United States and some other cultures, cancer is regarded as a disease that must be fought to end the civil insurrection. A war on cancer was declared in the U.S. military. Metaphors are particularly common in descriptions of cancer's human effects, and they emphasize both the state of the patient's health and the need to take immediate, decisive actions himself rather than to delay, to ignore or to rely entirely on others. The military metaphors also help rationalize radical, destructive treatments. In the 1970s, a relatively popular alternative cancer treatment in the U.S. was a specialized form of talk therapy based on the idea that a bad attitude caused cancer. People with a cancer personality, depressed, repressed, self-loathing, and afraid to express their emotions, were believed to have manifested cancer through subconscious desire. Some psychotherapists said that treatment to change the patient's outlook on life would cure cancer. Among other effects, this belief allowed society to blame the victim for having caused cancer by wanting it or having prevented its cure, by not becoming a sufficiently happy, fearless, and loving person. It also increased patients' anxiety as they incorrectly believed that natural emotions of sadness, anger, or fear shorten their lives. The idea was ridiculed by Susan Sontag, who published Illness as Metaphor while recovering from treatment for breast cancer in 1978. Although the original idea is now generally regarded as nonsense, the idea partly persists in a reduced form with a widespread but incorrect belief that deliberately cultivating a habit of positive thinking will increase survival. This notion is powerful in breast cancer culture. One idea about why people with cancer are blamed or stigmatized, called the just world hypothesis, is that blaming cancer on the patient's actions or attitudes allows the blamers to regain control. This is based upon the blamer's belief that the world is fundamentally just, and so any dangerous illness, like cancer, must be a punishment for bad choices because, in a just world, bad things would not happen to good people. The total health care expenditure on cancer in the U.S. was estimated to be $80.2 billion in 2015. Even though cancer-related healthcare expenditure has increased in absolute terms during recent decades, the share of health expenditure devoted to cancer treatment has remained close to 5% between the 1960s and 2004. A similar pattern has been observed in Europe, where about 6% of all healthcare expenditures are spent on cancer treatment. In addition to healthcare expenditure and financial toxicity, cancer causes indirect costs in the form of productivity losses due to sick days, permanent incapacity and disability, and premature death during working age. Cancer also causes costs for informal care. Indirect costs and everyday care costs are typically estimated to exceed or equal the healthcare costs of cancer. In the United States, cancer is included as a protected condition by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, mainly due to the potential for cancer having discriminating effects on workers. Discrimination in the workplace could occur if an employer believes that a person with cancer cannot do a job properly and may ask for more sick leave than other employees. If present, employers may also make hiring or firing decisions based on misconceptions about cancer disabilities. The EEOC provides interview guidelines for employers and lists of possible solutions for assessing and accommodating employees with cancer. Because cancer is a class of diseases, there is unlikely to be a single cure for cancer, any more than there will be a single treatment for all infectious diseases. Angiogenesis inhibitors were once incorrectly thought to have potential as a silver bullet treatment applicable to many types of cancer. Angiogenesis inhibitors and other cancer therapeutics are combined to reduce cancer morbidity and mortality. In clinical trials, experimental cancer treatments are studied to compare the proposed treatment to the best existing treatment. Treatments that succeed in one cancer type can be tested against other classes. Diagnostic tests are under development to better target suitable therapies to the right patients based on their biology. Cancer research focuses on the following issues: agents example, viruses and events example, mutations that cause or facilitate genetic changes in cells destined to become cancer, the precise nature of the genetic damage and the genes affected by it, the consequences of those genetic changes on the biology of the cell, both in generating the defining properties of a cancer cell and in facilitating additional genetic events that lead to further progression of cancer. Competition for financial resources appears to have suppressed the creativity, cooperation, risk-taking, and original thinking required to make fundamental discoveries, unduly favoring low-risk research into small incremental advancements over riskier, more innovative research. Other consequences of competition appear to be many studies with dramatic claims whose results cannot be replicated, and perverse incentives that encourage grantee institutions to grow without making sufficient investments in their faculty and facilities. Virotherapy, which uses converting viruses, is being studied. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a worry that cancer research and treatment are slowing down. Cancer affects approximately 1 in 1,000 pregnant women. The most common cancers found during pregnancy are the same as those found in non-pregnant women during childbearing ages: breast cancer, cervical cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, melanoma, ovarian cancer, and colorectal cancer. Diagnosing new cancer in a pregnant woman is difficult because any symptoms are commonly assumed to be a normal discomfort associated with pregnancy. As a result, cancer is typically discovered at a somewhat later stage than average. Some imaging procedures, such as MRIs, CT scans, ultrasounds, and mammograms with fetal shielding, are considered safe during pregnancy. Others, such as PET scans, are not. Treatment is generally the same as for non-pregnant women. However, radiation and radioactive drugs are typically avoided during pregnancy. In some cases, some or all treatments are postponed until after birth if the cancer is diagnosed late in the pregnancy. Early deliveries are often used to advance the start of treatment. Surgery is generally safe, but pelvic surgeries during the first trimester may cause miscarriage. Some medicines, especially certain chemotherapy drugs given during the first trimester, increase the risk of congenital disabilities and pregnancy loss, spontaneous abortions, and stillbirths. Some treatments can interfere with the mother's ability to give birth vaginally or breastfeed. Cervical cancer may require delivery by cesarean section. Radiation to the breast reduces the power of that breast to produce milk and increases the risk of mastitis. Also, when chemotherapy is given after birth, many of the drugs appear in breast milk, which could harm the baby. Despite all of this information, one thing remains clear: humankind has a long way to go in cancer research and treatments. Hopefully, one day we'll find the answers. For now, all we can do is arm ourselves with the facts.